Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Neeta Shetty, heading the Training and Marketing Department for iFix Implants. We hereby welcome you all for the journey and joining us for this informative session on indigenously developed dental implant. Today, we are privileged to have three amazing and renowned speakers who will take us through their journey of making and usage of an indigenous dental implant, that is iFix. Hence, let me first introduce you all to our first speaker for the day, Professor Naresh Bhatnagar from the Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Delhi. He has 18 patents till date under his name. He was a past Associate Dean, Research and Development at the IIT Delhi, has been instrumental in conceptualizing, designing, and developing iFix implant. In today's session, Professor Bhatnagar will elaborate on how the entire design process took place and what were the determining factors for choosing a specific design of implant and the surface topography. So here, I welcome you all for the session and I hand over the session to Professor Bhatnagar.
Is the mic turned on?
I think there is some technical glitches with respect to the voice. Just a sec. Okay, while we are resuming the entire session, in this times when we have most of the countries where they are talking about uh, deglobalization and building their own capacity and capabilities to develop their own brand. So we will be going through the story of iFix, which is again India's own product. So I think we have Professor Bhatnagar back. Sir,
Yes, very good morning to all of you. This is Naresh Bhatnagar from IIT Delhi. This dental implant design and materials webinar is something which I am going to do it for the first time. Most of you are much more aware about usage of these implants in your practices. So I'll try to bring in some aspects of mechanical engineer and a manufacturing engineer into this webinar. So before I go into that, this is a very famous picture which most of you can refer to as the godfather of implantology, Dr. Ingvar Brenmark, who in 1952, being an orthopedic surgeon, accidentally found that there is a concept of joining of a metal with the human bone or animal bone. And that he came to know by using a material called titanium. And the first word, osseointegration, was coined by him in 1962. So the definition as per the glossary of prosthodontic terms, what is an implant is a prosthetic device made of alloplastic materials implanted into the oral tissues beneath the mucosal and or periosteal layer and or within the bone to provide retention and support. So any implant becomes a part of our body once it is done. So he introduced the first titanium dental implant in a human volunteer by the name Gosta Larsen at University of Gothenburg in Sweden way back in 1965, long time back. And in 1978, Brainmark entered into a commercial partnership with Bofors, not the people with the guns, but of course, that's the parent industry, which was later called as Noble Industries, to focus on dental implants or medical implants. And finally, in 1981, that became Noble Pharma, and later nowadays we know it as Noble Biocare. So this was established, and it uh, brought the entire paradigm shift in the treatment of edentulism and loss of tooth. So these are some of the pictures of the earlier Brainmark system components. So if you want to classify dental implants, there are a variety of dental implants. For example, implants can be used in prosthodontics and craniofacial implants. It can be used for endodontics. It can also be used for orthodontics. Orthodontics ones are typically called the mini screws made out of titanium, and they are used for braces and for correction of the biomechanics of the mandible and the jaw, particularly in children, young kids. So these are screws which do not osseointegrate. They have to be removed after some time. So that concept, even though it is titanium, doesn't apply here. There are endodontic stabilizer implant also, very rarely used nowadays, but earlier it started. Now you can go into the endodontist, can go into different mechanism of patagarcha or some other things to stabilize these roots. Uh, when we come to the prosthodontics and maxillofacial rehabilitation, there are again three types: subperiosteal, transosteal, and the endosteal. So what we will be talking more about will be the endosteal implants, which can be of three types: either the root form, which is this A, or the B is a blade form, or the C, which is a disc form. Other implants like subperiosteal or transosteal are rarely used, but they are also required under certain conditions, which most of you might be well aware of in your studies. So the subperiosteal implant system was introduced by Dahl as a close impression procedure in 1943, long back. And further it was modified by the Russian Dr. Grashov and Goldberg as an open impression procedure in 1949, and then it is to be made custom built according to the bone, so it has to be specific to a particular patient, and then it is fixed to the cortical bone. Whereas the transosseous implant systems is composed of metal plate and transosseal pins and posts like the long ones at the end, which you can see here. And so the metal plate is held with retentive pins or screws which are fixed to the inferior border of the mandible. And this metal plate supports the transosseal pins posts that penetrate the full thickness of the mandible and project into the mouth in the interfominal area. But what we were interested was into the endosteal root form implants. So we have to classify that before even entering into that domain. So these are generally of three types. They can be non-threaded. For example, the first picture on the left, which are the coated metal, or it can be a coated hydroxyapatite, and these are press fitted. So you have to just push it in. So make a drilling of the hole in the mandible or the maxilla and push this, and then it will have a connection, internal connection. Then the second is the threaded implants, which can be either tapered or it can be straight. So this is the one on which we focused way back in 2006-7 when we started working in this domain. And then the connection on top of these implants can be either it may be internal hex or it can be an external hex. Now, looking into the design of various parts into it, I just define it into, I think, three major components. One is the body of the implant. Okay. At the end of the body, there is apical region or apex region, which will have a different geometry and features for a particular purpose. And on the top, there is a crest module, which may be having a micro threads, which may be a polished collar, depending on several thoughts and school of thoughts, we can make it. And then there is a connection, whether it is an internal hex or an external hex or tox or any other trilobe. And there are so many different connections. The major thing comes for an implant is what type of threads should be there. So there could be various type of threads. For example, A, B, C, D, which I have classified. There may be V-form threads. It can be buttress threads with a uh, flat on top. It can be a reverse buttress, which is a flat on at bottom, or a square shape. So there are more than 5,000 patents which are talking about different features of a dental implant when we started looking at the literature. And then even the apical, there can be a helix, there can be a cut to collect the bone which gets drilled into this zone, or even there is a hole at this region so that it become a non removable feature, so that there is an anti-rotation element which can be provided. So looking at this variety of things, we further can define dental implants based on metals, based on ceramics and polymers. Polymers are something which cannot take up the load. They may be there for a small duration, but these implants we want to be a part of our body and lifelong. So this is ruled out. Then comes ceramics. It is in the nascent stage. Very few companies have started manufacturing it, but these are very expensive and prohibitive. The main choice right now, the general 99% is metals. And in metals, there can be commercially pure titanium, which has been a material of choice for most of the situations in this root forms, and it started with it, including Noble Biocare. Uh, there are different grades, grade 1, 2, 3, 4 of commercially pure titanium. Each is having advantage and a disadvantage. Then there is titanium grade 5, ASTM grade 5, which is titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium, which is a choice for thin implants. That means it has more strength, it has more modulus. It could be in the blade form, it could be in the disc form, or it could be into the threaded form. We have gone in for titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium, and not just the grade 5 but also a very advanced grade which is known as extra low interstitial ELI, which is grade 123 of ASTM, because we wanted to have the minimum diameter of the implant to the maximum diameter of the implant of the same type. That means we should have only one abutment for all the sizes. So that was the premise, to reduce the inventory and to reduce the cost for us to indigenize these implants. So that was the major point. So we have gone for the best material, which is a little difficult to machine and too difficult to process, but we have developed all the technology for processing it. Then there are cobalt chromium, which is a vitalium, or the iron chromium, which are rarely used but can be used for endodontic stabilizers. There are other ceramic implants which are coming nowadays, but the threaded implants, very difficult to get a two-stage implant. These are single-stage implants which are quite successful. Only thing, the thread form is V, and they have to be casted. Machining of this after sintering is very difficult because they are very hard and brittle and can chip off easily. So and they cannot be mass produced. They have to be produced in batches, so the cost will always be higher. There could be press fit implants, but again, the surface conditions have to be optimized, otherwise there will be implant failure, because osseointegration term can be misleading in such scenarios. So there are some projects with All India Institute of Medical Sciences where we are just thinking about how to improve the surface of a zirconia to have better osseointegration. If we just look into the various design from the implant system point of view, so there is a brain mark implant system, which is again the threaded root form, which we are focusing, and others are also there which came into the market, which went away, like titanium plasma sprayed screws TPS, or ITI Stroman implant with a IMZ, a small shock absorber in between to take up the load during chewing and other compression, and the Frealate press fit implant, which is coated. Then there are others, just for the knowledge, this is a collage of variety of implants which can be there, like the Linko blade joint implant with, which is not the root form. There is a Ramos blade implant, there is a disc implant, there is a Zimmer 3D implant, which is a new concept having a trabecule metal, which is a porous structure, in order to have bone growth, faster osseointegration and bone growth inside. So this is another quite expensive system. And there is an endopore implant system. Again, it's a sintered titanium on the top of the surface. Then the new, not new, very new, it is coming in India now later. It was bicortical screw, which was developed in Italy, and which is a blade form. It can be bent and it can be used for trauma purposes. And so we have also developed this sort of an implant. But we'll see in future how much interest will be there by the dentist to use it. There is an osteoplate implant, which looks at the extreme right, okay, on which top there is an abutment which can be screwed onto it, and this goes into a very thin bone wherever you don't want any bone graft to be used. So this is the explanation of all these implants. Osteoplate was developed by Dr. Hansel in 2000, and based on the Linkos blade implant system, and can be used with less than 3.5 mm width of cortical bone. Similarly, Zimmer 3D implant was introduced in 2012. It is quite recent, and which has got this three-dimensional tantalum structure, which mimics a trabecular bone. Sometimes it is also called as a trabecular implant. And this technique is vapor deposition, which is a replica of carbon and then deposit. So it's a little expensive implant because the process involved is very elaborate. This concept was used successfully for the THR, that is the bone, hip bone, or the femur, which is used for osseointegration for the hip joint. So this biocortical was developed by Dino Garbascio of Italy in 1970, which is designed to engage the cortical plate so that there is an immediate instant stability. So the mechanical stability comes by biocortical plate action, and then you can immediately load this. So we have developed another implant which will come by iFix in future, which is a combination of bicortical and the thread form. So that is in the research phase right now. Endopore implant system was introduced by Cyborn Implant Solutions, and it is a sintered titanium surface coating, which is having a porous structure. And these are the others which are not there. Most of them are going out or fading out of the market because there were some issues with each, like for example, Linko or Frialet or the DIS implant system. Now coming to the IIT Delhi conceptual design, which started in 2007 in collaboration with the Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences under the NMITLI scheme of CSIR. So this was a nationally evolved project. At that point of time, there was not a single Indian company manufacturing dental implants, and 100% have to be imported from abroad, particularly from Europe and USA, and they were quite expensive, 18,000 to 20,000 per implant in 2006-7. And then later on, there was development of implants in Korea and in Israel, and then later on in China. So we have seen all the phases. But when we started designing, we looked into a system which is having a platform switching, which is having one single abutment for all the implant diameters, one single abutment screw for all the diameters. And so we have selected all the features which we applied for an Indian patent as well as a US patent, and we got this granted in 2019. So the design premise was that there is a cortical bone, there is a cancellous bone, and if we just try to put this implant system by into the bone system, because there is a cortical, there is a cancellous, and assuming that there is a complete osseointegration, okay, how much load it can take in tension, in compression, and as well as in torsion. So based on the stresses which this implant surface is going to give onto the surrounding bone, we calculated the von Mises stresses all around different thread types. For example, the classical V thread, the reverse buttress, the buttress with micro threads, and reverse buttress with micro threads. All these were understood, and then only we were able to pinpoint which gives minimum trauma and the maximum pull out force could be the choice for us in designing the implant. So we developed this thread type with a flat on top buttress and a micro threads. So this becomes our implant with a hex connection, and then there is abutment, straight or angular, 15 degree or 25 degrees, along with the screws. There is a cover screw, there is a healing screw, there is a implant abutment connection screws, various type of ball abutments, impression poping, and then all these assemblies have to be done and checked so that we can decide what should be the drilling sizes and so on, so that there is a complete mechanical stability when we do it. Moreover, we have to do analysis and testing as per ISO 14801 and 1348498 for the fatigue or the dynamic testing of this implant. So we have to make assembly, put it into a fixture, which is a fatigue testing machine. So we have an electroforce Bose system where we have to find the S by N curve. That means the number of cycles which the implants assembly can take for before failure. So we took this and compared it with the by doing a benchmarking with the existing marketed implants, and this is a NMITLI implant which fares very well as compared to the existing ones. Also, the torsional load has to be checked, and that for that the entire fixture was developed so that there is no fracturing, there is no failure at the top of the surface of the implant screw connection. The most important part of this entire study was to see the surface finish and the surface structure. So what exactly is the structure? So we have to find out what are the structures. So we looked into all the commercial implants, and in the center, this is the NMITLI or the CSIR implant, which IIT Delhi developed, and later on it became IFX. So if you look at the topography, so which we did by scanning electron microscope, uh, for example, on the top left corner, you can see A, B, C, which are the implants, marketed implants, which are blasted with resorbable. Sorry for the spelling, this should be resorbable media. CMI implants, Neobiotech, which was a control implant, uh, and the second one is high tech. The third is the add-in, which is some of the most common in Indian population because this is one of the cheapest implants available from Israel. If you look at the anodized and coated implant, which are coming into the second category of implants, there is Noble Biocare, number one. Then there is Alpha Dent, number two, and C is Leader Tixos, which is from Italy, based on 3D printing of the powders of titanium. So this implant also failed miserably in the market. Then there is the gold standard SLA, that is selective large grit blasting and then acid etching. So we have Neobiotech, which is a control implant for a study, and then MPI, the Strawman, and SLA active. So SLA active, you can see that the scale is now 500 nanometers. So others are 10 microns or 5 microns. So here we are actually looking into the nano features of the implant. So we have to find out and characterize. We did it so many techniques. We started with Raman. Also, we did XRD and XPS or EDX to find out the elemental composition of our machined implants, add-in implants, MPI, Neobiotech, Novel Biocare, and we found that most of the roughness is lying between 1.3 to 1.8 RA. RA is the average roughness. Whereas when we do the machining, it is only 0.25 roughness. So that means we need a technique to make the surface rough on the implant, and being circular, we have to modify this. And when we started looking how to do it, there was no machine available in India. And when we talked to different people in Europe, they say you have to buy. The machine was costing more than a crore for doing the surface blasting SLA. So we developed our own machine, we developed our own technique, and did a complete study on our own, and came up with our own set of parameters, machines, everything. So this is our IIT Delhi developed implant, which was given to Maulana Azad for clinical trials, and there was a non-inferiority randomized control trial with the optimized acid-etched dental implant. So a lot of trials have gone, and more than 200 models were made, uh, and we have to come to this microstructure which is having a roughness array of around 1.5 to 1.8 with a honeycomb structure on the surface, so that there is a much higher bone osseointegration and the spread of uh, of the um, of the tissues, the osteoblast tissues, so that they can spread out as quickly as possible, and then it becomes a osseointegrated part. So this was the second. The neobiotech was a control, and then this study was carried out under a CTRI guidance at Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences. Once the entire study was done, for example, I can just show one or two pictures. Dr. Farooq will take up from here. We started with this. So this is IIT Delhi developed. So one important thing which I want to say, that IIT Delhi developed a DCGI control lab to make medical devices, particularly dental implants, for clinical trials. So a lot of permissions, a lot of SOPs, ISO 13485, everything has to be obtained, and the system has to develop so that we can directly give from the institute, academic institute, to the clinicians for their trials. So I can just show one X-ray of implant which is put into one of the patients, very important patient, and this is working for last 7 years. And finally, this led to the transfer of technology, because this was not inferior at all, and there was a success rate of more than 97%, which also led into a new company coming from the energy sector into a medical device sector. And this is the name. I stands for India, I stands for IIT also, and I also stands for in, the future of the company. So this was a new team. The parent company is Kamal and Con, so they have made it to Kamal MedTech to realize our dreams. So our dream was to make in India and make for the world. So it's a very young team of engineers and sales people, and then management people, and the supporting staff, who are all working together to make this iFix for you, so that we can have a brand, we can have a product coming out of India, which is none other than the best in the world. So it is not second to the best, it is the best in the world, which I can assure you. And finally, I can say that the letter of appreciation which we received, all the teams, by the none other than Prime Minister Modi in the month of November, on this effort of CSIR, IIT Delhi, and Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences. So over to Dr. Farooq. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatnagar. Thanks for your amazing presentation. Now we will have a poll coming up for the session, and post the poll. So we will have Dr. Farooq session. So just to introduce our second speaker for the day, Dr. Farooq. Dr. Farooq Faraz, Masters in Periodontology, formerly also an ITI scholar, University of Connecticut, School of Dental Medicine. Currently, Dr. Farooq is an associate professor in the Department of Periodontology and Implantology in Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences. He is involved in the research project titled Design and Manufacture of Indigenous Dental Implant under the New Millennium India Technology Leadership Initiative, which is funded by the CSIR, that is the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research under the Government of India. Dr. Farooq will elaborate in his session about the different animal trials and the clinical trials done at Maulana Azad, and also share the outcomes of the same with us to see how successful the implant solution was. So over to you, Dr. Farooq.
Well, thank you, Dr. Neeta. Am I audible?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So we'll have the slides in. Well, hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible to all of you. I know at this time of pandemic going on throughout the world, there is another epidemic of webinars also going on. And I really appreciate all of you, coming out and finding us time to attend this webinar. So I am Dr. Farooq Faraz from Department of Periodontics, Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences, New Delhi. So we have been involved for quite some time, say about 10 years or so, in the development of indigenous dental implants at Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences. Under the guidance and PI-ship of Professor Mahesh Sharma, who had been our director principal before. Now he's become the Vice Chancellor of Indraprasth University. And in conjunction with IIT Delhi, under the PI-ship of Dr. Naresh Bhatnagar, you would have heard him a little while ago. And we have on team Dr. Smriti Bhardwaj, who's a periodontist, and we had Dr. Abhinav Sood also, who had been who's a prosthodontist and who had been with us for quite some time. Now, as Dr. Bhatnagar had mentioned, it is a nationally evolved project under the new Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative of the scheme of CSIR. Under this scheme, the CSIR wanted to jumpstart the manufacturing and designing of certain biomedical devices in India, because most of the biomedical devices we had been importing from abroad. So it was high time that India took the lead in the manufacturing of these biomedical devices. They included the femoral implants, which were given to AIIMS, the cardiac stents, which were given to Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute, which is a state-of-art testing and medical institute down south. The cervical plates manufacturing and designing were given to Satya Sai Baba, and dental implants were given to Maulana Azad in conjunction with IIT Delhi. So the objectives were to formulate a dental implant which will provide all the prosthetic solutions. The macro and micro geometry of the implant was such that it should preserve the crestal bone. As Dr. Bhatnagar had already explained in the previous slides, the FE analysis was conducted and a design was chosen which was least detrimental to the cortical bone, especially 1 year post-loading. It should be compatible for both delayed and early immediate loading, self-tapping in nature, with minimal instrumentation. The way we reduced the armamentarium was we designed a multifunctional component which could be, which would act as a transfer part, it would act as a abutment, and it would act as an impression coping also, and thereby reducing the inventory. And also, it should be reasonably inexpensive. So you see, we were not trying to reinvent the wheel out here. There were many implant companies in the market, but all of them, are based abroad. So it was high time that India took the lead in developing its own implant system, which best suited its masses, was reasonably priced, and state of art, comparable to any other implant system, good implant system of standard available throughout the world. Thus began our journey, playing our bit in the Make in India campaign. So we got a limited manufacturing and testing license from DCGI to go ahead with the trials and studies. So I'm going to walk you through the different studies that we conducted at Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences, which included but are not limited to animal trials on rabbit models, micro-CT analysis, histomorphometric study, sterility testing, stability testing, and clinical trials, including both phase 1 and phase 2. So we went ahead with the animal studies, which was at Sri Ram Institute of Industrial Research, New Delhi. Sorry. Specifically prepared, microimplants were implanted into the femur of white New Zealand rabbits. We had about 12 white New Zealand rabbits and evaluated after 6 and 12 weeks. Following necropsy, histological and micro-CT and histomorphometric evaluation was done, which revealed no adverse effect and an extremely favorable bone-to-implant contact. These samples were then sent for micro-CT analysis at Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute of Medical Sciences in Trivandrum. They had a state-of-art testing labs. And at that time, this was the only place way back in, I think, 2008, where micro-CT analysis was done. And this was the first time that they also were doing on a metallic object. Now, implant being a non-magnetoferric material, it was possible to do micro-CT analysis on that without having ghost burst appearance, actually. So this was there was this one mean machine running for 48 hours together to make 40,000 slices of the image, and then reconstructing the entire image into a 3D model. Now, as you can see in the picture, we have this implant. This was a one-day sample, which this implant was suspended. Sorry, this implant was suspended in the femur of the rabbit. Now, we as dentists, when we imagine, bone, the first thing that comes to our mind is jawbone, with a lot of trabeculae, medullary spaces, trabeculae thickness, number, and so on and so forth. But here we had a picture where the implant was in an empty space. Now, this was a little disheartening to us, because what would we expect at the end of the day when there is no bone inside, actually? But wait, what we were about to see in 12 weeks' time really was astonishing to us. So here is the picture of the image, CT image of the 12-week sample. Voila. Well, you have, meshwork of trabeculae growing from the periphery to the implants from all over and engulfing the implant like a meshwork. You can see right here in the picture how it has engulfed the implant all around the endosteum of the femur. Now, this was very astonishing to us. We had got bone in areas where there is not supposed to be any bone in the first place. So there was something about the surface treatment and the microgeometry of the implant that led to non-contact osseointegration or bone forming all around the implant, where it did not exist. Now, we went ahead with histomorphometric study also. There's a very complicated processing for histomorphometric study, especially in case of implant along with the bone. So they took good 48 days to process the sample, and it confirmed. I'm sorry about this. It confirmed our findings of micro-CT, where we had good amount of bone at 12 weeks. So at 6 weeks, we had around 26.56% of bone formation that you could see on the lower left side, right here. And in the lower right corner of the histomorphometric picture, you can see the bone forming all around the threads of the implants. Now, this was about 80.5% bone formation. This is in the middle picture, you see how the sample is put in the machine for analysis in micro-CT. Now, then we went ahead with the stability test and the sterility test. This was yet another complete study in itself. I cannot go into the detail because of the paucity of time, but all the sample, they confirm with this test of sterility. Then we went ahead with the first-in-man trial or phase 1 trial. We had the comparator, which were a standard implant, that is Xive, Friolate Xive. I'm just showing you one of the cases of our case implant, that is the NMITLI implant. This is the Preop. 3 teeth missing right here. 3 paralleling pins in place after osteotomy was performed. Implants in place. So this is the final prosthesis. And this is what Dr. Naresh Bhatnagar had shown you initially. We had good amount of, this is a post-op, this is a picture which is 7-year follow-up of post-loading. You can see how beautifully the crestal bone is maintained throughout these implant, even after 7 years of loading, actually, where 1 to 1.5 millimeter of bone loss is also considered as acceptable after a year or so. Then we went ahead with the randomized control non-inferiority clinical trial. It was to evaluate the efficacy and safety of indigenous developed dental implants. Of course, the sample size was much larger than the phase 1 or first-in-man trial. So by definition, a non-inferiority trial aims to demonstrate that the test product is not worse than the comparator by more than a small pre-specified margin, or the non-inferiority margin, or delta. So the non-inferiority margin was calculated to be 10%. An allocation ratio between the test group and the standard implant was 1:3 with type 1 error. Now the power was high for the study, 90%, and it followed the standards of international device safety regulation, the Helsinki Agreement, the draft guidance document of CDSCO, of DCGI, and Class 2 Special FDA Consideration Act, so on and so forth. Now here's a case of missing 3746 region. In 46 we had placed our implant, which was the case, and in 36 we had placed the control implant. So here's the frontal, the lateral view. Our implant in place after osteotomy was performed. So we took the ISQ value. It was one of the parameters to be evaluated. We had good ISQ value of initial stability of 93 and 71 in 2 different planes. Now these are the post-op picture, post-op radiographs. On the left you see our case implant. On the right you see the control implant series. So on the topmost left corner we have the case implant post-op. Here we have the control implant post-op. In the middle, we have the case implant in stage 2, while on the right we have the control implant, following stage 2. And the bottommost picture is that of 1 year post-loading. Now you can see how beautifully the crestal bone is still preserved, post-loading. Of course, near the control we can see slight amount of resorption, but it's quite within the acceptable range. Coming to analysis. So the survival rate after 1 year in function, we had around 125 cases and 60 control with the allocation ratio of 3:1, of which we had 121 implants surviving. And we had a high survival percentage of about 97% in the non-inferiority trial. So the 1 year survival rate of the test implant was 97% with the past assumption of non-inferiority margin of 10%. And observing the p-value of 0.203, it can be concluded that the test group is non-inferior to the standard group of dental implants. Now, it was quite in tune with the study of Peterson in 2007, where he performed the meta-analysis of different studies, an estimated 5-year survival rate, where they proposed that the conventional tooth-supported fixed denture prostheses had 93.8% survival rate. Solely implant-supported FDPs had 95.2%, while implant-supported single crowns had 94.5%. And our study showed 97% survival rate, which was quite acceptable. The final icing on the cake was we got the US patent after a long, pursuit. Actually, basically we had a volley of questions. We had to picket fence our findings, our innovations and all. But we were finally granted the US patent in year 2007. And Indian patent was also granted from 2007 onward for a period of 20 years or so. So the endpoint of all these schemes under New Millennium Indian Leadership Technology Initiative is they should have a commercial viability. The project should not die its own death. So the technology has to be transferred to the industry. And thus, this technology was transferred to the industry. As Dr. Bhatnagar had mentioned, it is this firm by the name of Kamal Medtech, which is a Faridabad-based firm. They have a sprawling facility of manufacturing and clean rooms in Faridabad. They have, highly equipped CNC terminal machines, the cleaning equipments, and all the paraphernalia that is required to produce high-quality implants. Well, I thank you for a patient hearing, and stay home and stay safe.
So, thank you, Dr. Farooq, for your excellent presentation. Thanks a lot for taking us through the journey of the entire clinical trial and the animal studies and the outcome of the implant. Now we will have the next poll coming up. And the next speaker for the session is Dr. Gunaseelan Rajan, who is an MBBS, MDS in oral and maxillofacial surgery, fellowship in dental surgery from the Royal College of Surgeons, and PhD in Doctor of Science. He's been a chairman, Education Committee, Asian Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons, examiner in the Diploma of Implant Dentistry, Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh, editorial board member of the Asian Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, adjunct professor at Tamil Nadu Dr. MGR Medical University, and member of National Academy of Medical Sciences. Dr. Gunaseelan will take us through his experience with his usage on IFX in a full mouth rehabilitation cases, and also why he would prefer an indigenous made implant over any other implant. So I hand over the session to Dr. Gunaseelan.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, or rather good afternoon. And thank you very much for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. My talk is certainly a little related to my experience with iFix implants, but it's going to be a little more of a philosophical talk on why I chose to do iFix. For me, the interesting and exciting thing was this was a product of Indian entrepreneurship. And I think it's interesting to see a high quality product coming out. And most of us are used to implants from outside India. And to see an excellent quality product come from our backyard is very, very heartening.
Dr. Guna, sorry to interrupt. The video is not available.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me see.
We can see the video.
You can see?
Yes.
Okay, Roxanne, can you see?
So can you just turn off and on your camera? Your camera is not visible.
How's it?
Yeah, now it's
okay.
Thank you.
Can Nita hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. We can hear you and we can see.
Okay, fine. Okay. So for me, the interesting thing, and like what Farooq said, was this academia, industry, and the government collaboration. I've seen the pain when we do not have this collaboration. As early as 1995, I was involved in an indigenous implant design with the DRDO, the Defense Research and Development Organization, in Hyderabad, along with the Institute of Nuclear Medicine and Allied Sciences, Delhi. And Professor Ravindranath was a prosthodontist, headed this program. And this was under the initiative of Professor Abdul Kalam, because he said this high technology should reach the masses in India. So this collaborative program, and at that point of time, Dr. Paranjit Singh, also from the armed forces, was instrumental. We designed and got the first titanium implant in India. We ran some clinical trials with the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, with Annamala University under Dr. Professor Thangavelu, and Ragas Dental College under my guidance, and also in the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi. And we got the clinical trials done, published, very good results, reports on the surgical stage. But like Farooq said, the next step did not happen. They gave it to an industry, and that did not see the light of day. It did not come into commercial production. It did not come into the market, and it died. So when this time I saw, there was a great interaction between the academia, industry, and the government. I saw the academia coming in the form of the IIT group led by Professor Bhatnagar designing, and you saw how it took us through the entire design process. And then on the academic side, in the dental field, Professor Mahesh Verma, who is a well-known academician and administrator, who saw the potential and developed this further. And he had, of course, the great team of youngsters in Mount Azad Dental College. And he saw how this went through very rigorous testing, that what we normally see in implants from abroad. They've gone through the testing process. And then, of course, they went through enormous clinical trials, very well-controlled trials, and they came out with excellent results, which are no inferior to any implant from anywhere in the world. And of course, they had to get the ISO certification, everything from the government, which makes it a little more comfortable from our point of view. So all this is what made me say, okay, here we are with a great system, with a great collaboration, and a very good industry, Kamal Biotech, coming into the field, because they need to produce this of the same high standard and take it to commercialization, which is not easy. So this came about, and then very good clinical research outcomes. And for me, that was enough. Once I've seen the research, once I saw the facilities that they had excellent infrastructure in terms of a manufacturing facility, quality testing, sterilization, packaging, everything. It was really a state-of-art place that they had in Faridabad. So once I was convinced that this is a good system, there was very high quality, there was enough clinical trials that have happened, and I was convinced that this was as good as any other implant that we were using as of present. I'm using almost 10 implant systems from across the world, and when I knew that this was as good, I said we have to start using this implant system. And more so, I also realized that they were future ready. You saw some of the features that they put up. They had the platform shift incorporated into the implant, which is, these are all relatively newer things that have come into the market. They've got a nice internal hex, 12-degree Moss taper, conical connection. And now they're also future ready. They already had scan bodies. They had tie bases, which means they are ready for the digital world. Today, implantology is, the restorative part is completely going the digital way. So this is a company which has the standard conventional implants, were already future ready, so that we can use it even if you want to be future ready with digital technology, with scanning technology, if you've got intraoral scanners. So they're already ready with this also. And they were innovative and they were responsive. For example, when we started for the full arch, because the situation is slightly different, we were going to use them as tilted implants, like the all-on-4 technique. And then you are looking at completely new components. You're looking at screw retained solutions for a full arch. You're looking at angled abutments, multi-unit abutments, and you're looking at bone mills. So many other components. For example, we needed a slightly longer implant prosthetic screwdriver, which at that point they did not have, but they were so quick and responsive in understanding a clinician's need and making that available. So this is what made me very, it sort of said, okay, here's a group that's going to support us in our clinical endeavor, and they're going to be responsive. So that makes a huge difference. We know people, all of us as clinicians know what the support, how important the whole support system is as far as implantology is concerned. And then, of course, they are also just started the marketing, and they have been very innovative. You can see that they are spending lesser in marketing with using, I think, social media very effectively, and timing also very effectively. And from that point of view, I think they have got a cost-effective implant, which I think is very relevant from our point of view. This is an indigenous implant is got very high quality, very good record of research and clinical trial, and cost effective, which can really make it reach the masses. And I think, especially with the relevant times of COVID times, a local empowerment. I know these are the times when I think we are forced to reckon with everything local, local food, local environment, local people. I think this is also a time which reinforces that we should look at local empowerment and encourage this sort of an enterprise. So having said that, I said, okay, when we had a patient like this, what we call as a terminal dentition patient, a terminal dentition, and I always had a firm believer nowadays of, if you can do an immediate placement and immediate load, that should be the way we go forward. Because patients, if today we have the technology, we have these implants which have stood a test of time, and we're all getting, we show the results, so we're getting 97% success rate with the titanium implants. And I can tell you very, very convincingly now that implants do not fail us anymore. The material, the metal, the surface technology, the treatment, everything has come to stay, is very standardized. You can get easily 97% upwards. If at all, implants don't fail us, we are the ones who fail the implants. So we need to be very careful about treatment planning. So when I said, okay, in a full arch situation, what do I do? Of course, I'd like to do like extract, immediate place, and immediate load. But that should always be with proper clinical diagnosis and planning. That is very critical in such situations. For example, I may get a good primary stability. We all know that we need minimum primary stability of 35 Newton centimeter for immediate load. But that's not the only thing. We have to look at the medical history of the patient. We have to see if they are diabetic. For example, if they are diabetic and the HbA1c is more than 8, that's basically not under good control, then you're obviously already starting at the wrong wicket. So we need to be careful about the medical history. We need to see look at the medical history, especially with regard to medications. The classic example now we see is all this things that produce osteoporosis. You have to be very careful about selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the SSRI group of drugs, which is recently identified to be increasing osteoporosis. We need to look at if they have any bruxism, if they have any opposing arch, which is very strong, full of natural teeth or ceramic bridges. So we need to keep all this diagnostic acumen in mind before we do the final planning. And if you're careful with your planning, then you should not have any problems with these sort of implants. So that is very critical. So this particular situation, this patient, we did total extraction, cleared it up, did clearing of the bone there, all that infection, did an osteoplasty to make the bone even. And then, of course, we plan using a cone beam CT. And once we did that, it was in his mid-early 50s, this patient. And then this is where we had 4 implants in the lower arch, the posterior ones tilted. And we had, IFIX has 17 and 30 degree angled multi-unit abutments, which allowed us to place these abutments in the posterior implants. And the upper arch, of course, the anterior 2 were IFIX implants. The zygoma implants were the Nobel zygoma implants. So when there's almost zero bone in the posterior maxilla, this is the only choice we have using the zygoma implants. But you can combine them with the anterior implants of a standard design, and then you can do a screwed multi-unit abutment, and then your routine prosthetic impression procedures, and give them a screw retain immediate processes and interim processes within a matter of 48 hours. So this is another situation where, again, you can see a failing dentition and completely irregular arch form. So we had to go ahead and do total extraction. And this situation, we planned for 6 implants, axial implants, in the you could give immediate load using implant support. Did not have enough primary stability, so we let it sleep till stage 2. And 6 months later, when you do a definitive process, we'll include that implant also. And the lower arch 2 axial implants, again, of the iFix design. So what I can say is now, if you are comfortable with the implant and you are comfortable with your planning and the techniques, you can innovate. You can innovate using whatever you've learned from multiple systems and multiple symposia, and you can extrapolate the use of these implants even in these situations. It's just that you have to be very careful in your treatment planning, and you have to be careful that you get educated properly in the use of that particular implant system. So this is the clinical situation of this patient. So we have to understand that we can do wonders with these patients, and the cost effectiveness, the ease of use is, see, for me, in a surgical point of view, it should be a simple system. It must be able to give me primary stability as far as possible early. I do not want an implant system that will spin. So I've used some implants and it goes up to 35, 70 newtons and then it starts spinning. So that's a disaster. And that is partly from the point of the bone and the site preparation. It's also partly because of implant design. So we need to be careful from that point of view. I've been very comfortable using this because there is no spinning. And if your planning is right and your technique is right, in all the patients I've got, the primary stability is more than 35 Newton centimeter. And we also saw how Farooq showed in stage 2, you could check with the ISQ. He was getting 71 and 90 ISQ values, which are, I think, really good from the academic point of view. You have something to hang your cap on, that you've got this well tested and you know when to load secondary. So with these few words, I want to come to the end of my presentation. I just wanted to show that Farooq had in Maulana Azad, they've got enough of trial and reports with single implants and with bridge situations. They also, to my knowledge, have overdenture patients on a mandible. But this is an extension that we're seeing with full arch, immediate placement, immediate load, and we are very happy with the results. And I think this is the way to go forward. Thank you very much all for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Guna, for a wonderful session on highlighting on why you chose iFix and what was its benefit and how the cases have fared well for you. Now we will have a poll session post this session.
Thank you.
Roxanne, can I have the video, please? Okay, thank you, everyone. That was our manufacturing plant at IMT Faridabad. That's where Kamal MedTech manufactures dental implants and cardiac stents as well in the same manufacturing unit. So I will take you briefly through the entire portfolio of iFix to conclude this session. So where it all began, we've already seen in our different panelist presentations that it was under the patronage of CSIR that IIT Delhi, that is Professor Bhatnagar and Maulana Azad, where Dr. Farooq, everyone worked together to design and conceptualize, develop an indigenously made implant. And that's where the entire technology transfer happened to Kamal MedTech. That's the company we are talking about. And the commercialization hence proceeded. So that's our infrastructure. The facility area is around 50,000 square feet. We have a controlled area of around 20,000 square feet. State-of-art clean rooms, compliant with the MDR 2017 and ISO 1345. We have high-tech quality control labs, world-class manufacturing equipments, and well-trained manpower, and best-in-class technology to ensure that our users get a best global standard product. So we have the Swiss Tornos machine, which we have in our manufacturing unit, which are able to manufacture the machine, the dental implants, post which they undergo the sandblasting and acid etching. We saw it in the video, the entire procedure. Coming to the iFix implant features. Now, we've seen in our all our past presentations. So coming to the implant design, it's a corticocancellous design, which is a tapered root form implant. You see a buttress thread in the body, the micro threads in the cortical area for a better stress distribution. The surface treatment here is a SLA surface, which is clinically proven. We've seen the clinical trials, we've seen the clinical outcomes in the various clinical scenarios. The roughness here, because of the surface treatment, we have a micro roughness in the cortical area and macro roughness in the buttress thread. Coming to the most important feature of iFix implant, because we wanted to make it more easily acceptable and easy for each and every clinician to use this, was a single prosthetic platform with an internal hex and a conical connection, providing a much more rigid connection to an implant and abutment interface. There was an inbuilt platform shift in the design, and we will also see later in my further slides. Now, the single prosthetic platform was given across all the diameters. Hence, the inventory was minimized in terms of prosthetic rehabilitation, making it simpler for every clinician. The anatomically tapered design, as you see, the tip of the implant, the apex is more rounded so that any anatomical structures are not damaged here while you're doing the placement of the implant. Going to the next slide. Coming to platform shifting. So like we said, there was an inbuilt platform shifting across the diameters, and we see the sections here. So what as a company we have developed is we've got two diameters of healing abutments as well. One which is a 4.15 diameter and the other one is a 5.2. Similarly, we have the abutment which corresponds to the similar diameters, that is 4.15 and 5.2. So whatever the soft tissue adaptation you achieve in the second stage surgery is able to carry forward while you're doing the abutment placement and loading of the implants. Coming to the different size variations available. So we have 4 diameters available, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and 5. Different lengths available. That is, we have the minimum length of 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 10, 11.5, 13, and 15. So we are currently also working on a very narrow implants, that is 2.75, which we are under the process and which will be launched very soon. Coming to the surgical kit, it's a very comprehensive and a compact surgical kit. which basically caters to all your surgical and prosthetic needs. So while we say surgical and prosthetic needs, you have all your osteotomy drills, you have your osteoplasty drills such as round burr, you have your lens drill. Then you have these lens specific stoppers, which give you a better control on the vertical osteotomy. And then the implant drivers, which are available for both ratchet as well as your machine drivers and your prosthetic drivers, whether it is your hex driver or the ball abutment driver. So it's a very comprehensive and a compact surgical kit which caters to your surgical and the prosthetic needs. Coming to the prosthetic solution, so we have both standard or prefabricated, readily available prosthetic solutions. So coming to the cement retained solutions, what we have, the first image that you see on the left hand side is a cemented abutment. It's a very solid abutment. Like you see, there is no gingival margin that has been defined here. This is available as a solid abutment just in case if one wants to define it as per the clinical requirement. So the lab can do this during the prosthesis phase. Then we have the shoulder abutments, which are again available in hex and non-hex options for your single and multiple clinical scenarios. And then the same with multiple gingival column margins, which cater to your major clinical scenarios. Coming to the angled abutment, catering to 15 and 25 degree angled abutment, which covers major of the clinical scenarios available. Now, going to the screw retain solution, we have the multi-units like Dr. Guna highlighted in his presentation. He's used them straight 17 degree and 30 degree multi-units available in different collar heights. And then we also have the UCLA plastic abutments, which are available as hex and non-hex, which is again a customizable screw retain solution, which can be used in different clinical scenario where you want to have a customization based on the patient's needs. Coming to customized and over-denture solution, like Dr. Guna said that we are ready for the future. We are updated with our upcoming solutions. So here we have in the digital solution, we have our scan bodies, which are available again in 2 different diameters and multiple collar heights. We have the tie-based abutment, wherein you can have an angulated screw channel hole abutment. And here you have hex and non-hex option, again available for a single and a multiple scenario. And last but not the least, which I would like to highlight, is a pre-mill bar, wherein you see the implant abutment connection is already pre-milled and given to you, wherein you can mill this to a desired screw retain or a cement retained option based on the clinical scenario. In over-denture solution, currently we have only the ball attachment solutions, but we are in the process of adding the locator attachments also very soon. So this majorly covers all the prosthetic needs, which caters from your standardized prosthetic solution and customized prosthetic solutions. Thank you so much. So for any more information, you may contact us as info@kamalmedtech.com. Stay home, stay safe, and thanks a lot. You guys have been a great audience. And now we will have our question and answer session. So can we have all the speakers back in the session? So we will take questions one by one. So there is a question here. This question goes out to Dr. Guna. There is a question which is the stability between the bone and the root is better, or the implant and the bone is better?
The stability comparing the root and the bone and the implant and the bone.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a fundamental question on biology. It is completely different because one is an osseointegration. You do not have a periodontal ligament interface. So there is a completely different concept as far as bone is concerned. So bone directly to the implant surface. In fact, they have shown direct bone osteon to implant surface contact. And then when it comes to soft tissue, again, it's slightly different. You know, the attachment of the fibers, the periodontal ligament fibers to the root is in a very different configuration. All those bundles, the circumferential, the angular bundles are all attached in a different way compared to the fibers that are around the implant. So those implants are more circumferential. You do not have direct contact, although they have shown some hemidesmosomal attachments to the implant surface. So, and that's the reason why you have a slightly different surface for the soft tissue versus the bone. So to basically keep it short, the connection, the contact is different, but each has its own role to play. But we have also seen that implants made of titanium 6Al4V, and also with this newer surface of ELI, 6Al4V and ELI, which is again a very, very advanced, to my knowledge, there is, I think, just one system worldwide which uses the titanium 6Al4V ELI. So we are already on a very advanced type of material. So from that point of view, I think the contact and the integration, osseointegration is excellent.
Thank you, Dr. Guna. This is the next question to Professor Bhatnagar. Is there any possibility of manufacturing a single piece immediate functional loading bicortical implants in this platform? Sir, you're not audible.
So the question is very simple. We have already developed bicortical implants of different lengths, starting from 8 millimeters to almost 16, 17 millimeters length, insertion length, with the same abutment style, so that you can just put the crown with a similar emerging profile. So you can use the same system. And then one more development which we have done, and it is going for the later stage of research, is having a bicortical with the buttress threads, which is something going to make a paradigm shift, which can be immediately inserted and loaded also. So a patient will require only one setting. So
Professor Bhatnagar and Dr. Farooq, this question is directed to you. Is there any specific reason why the buttress thread design was chosen and not square thread design?
okay, so the buttress is there are two type of buttress. The normal buttress with a flat on top, and the other one is the flat at the bottom. So there is a 45-degree inclination. So when you insert, let's say when you are inserting the buttress, you don't want the removal torque to be lower, so that the implant can retain much higher. So generally the flat. If it is a square one, the insertion becomes not self-cutting type of thread. With buttress, we can also have a provision that it can do self-cutting and self-aligning. So we can make this also a little active at the apical region. So one or two threads can have a various pitch and various depth, so that it becomes almost like noble active when we say. So while you are drilling in one direction, it may be going into another direction. You can do a automatic correction there, provided you are having the buttress threads, which are having a sharp edge at the with a varying pitch. So that is one more modification which can go into the future. But right now, these are the standard ones. And You can go for V type of threads, but then those are the nominal machine type of threads, which are not recommended for dental implants, which have to be there in your body for a very, very long time.
And if I may add in, you see, initially during the project, we had conducted these FE analysis where one Mrs. stresses were also calculated. And we found, comparing the V shape, the reverse buttress, the buttress with micro threads, we found that the buttress with micro threads produce the least amount of stresses at the cortical interface, implant and cortical interface, and also implant and abutment interface. Now, this, when translated into clinical terms, as you could have seen from my previous slides during this presentation, a lot of cortical bone was preserved post-loading. So that could be another advantage of buttress with microthreads, the design that macrogeometry that we had incorporated in our implant system.
Thank you, Professor Bhatnagar and Dr. Farooq. Dr. Farooq, the next question goes out to you. Are these implants good for anterior immediate loading in aesthetic area?
Yeah, we have done quite a number of cases for the anteriors, almost 50% of 125 cases. And they seem to be working well, actually. They seem to be preserving the cortical bone, and hence we're getting a good soft tissue profile. So I would certainly recommend for anteriors also.
The next question again goes out to you, Dr. Farooq. How much of bone to implant contact was achieved with these implants?
Yeah, as I had shown in the slide, through the micro CT analysis and histomorphometric analysis, we had got a bone to implant contact of about 85.6% or 85.5% at 12-week sample, actually. And this, when translated into the terminology of osseointegration, it is almost 100% osseointegration, theoretically speaking. But we had a good 85.5% of bone to implant contact.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. The next question goes out to Dr. Guna. Sir, would you prefer ceramic implants over titanium implants in any case? If yes, what will be your criteria for the case selection in such cases?
Okay. Ceramic implants have a role in the aesthetic zone. I think
we have lost the voice.
Okay. Yeah, I think sir's back again. Yes, sir.
Okay. So ceramic implant, certainly from aesthetic point of view, somebody asked a question on the aesthetic zone, is certainly a superior design from the aesthetic zone, especially when you have thin bone and thin gingiva, the thin scallop type biotype. It is also important in the long run as far as metal versus non-metal is concerned, because although titanium is biologically inert, we know that there is an incidence of true allergy, maybe 1 in 100,000 or even less, but there is known cases of true titanium allergy. Whereas ceramic being non-metal, that is unlikely. So in patients who could have, and there are some patients who just don't like metal in the body, okay, for various reasons. People have related titanium, 6L, aluminum to Alzheimer's and all that. So there's always a small sort of a question mark, what is metal doing in my body? What is it leaching out? So from that point of view, ceramic will certainly have an advantage. Now, the only technical issue earlier was all the ceramic implants were one-part implant, which was not very good from the restoration point of view, not easy from the restoration point of view. But today, we also have implant with the through. So that technicality has been important. Certainly, ceramic has a role to play, and metal, and it will definitely be a better material of choice for implant in the future. Thank you.
Dr. Guna, there is a next question. That is, if the patient's bone density is D3 and is taking a Prolia injection, what is the possibility for implants? If yes, then which one you suggest?
Okay, that's a good question because this got nothing to do with implants. This is exactly what I was talking about. Implants have been made safe and very predictable for patients. We have to make sure that our planning makes the patients also predictable for the implants. This is a classical case, patient taking, on bisphosphonates. So that's an entirely different lecture. I can't, but in a nutshell, you need to look at the osteoporotic score, whether there is osteopenia, whether it is a standard deviation on the DEXA scan is above -2.5 or between -1 and -2.5. So depending on that, it'll influence your treatment. You can also look at if the patient can be, put on a different type of. See, today there are different classes of medicines that are used for osteoporosis. Okay, bisphosphonates are slowly going off. You're getting monoclonal antibodies, and you've got teriparatide and medicines which are, akin to. So there are different types of alternatives that are available. But if the patient is using this, you need to look at the bone density. You have to also now they say you can do, a specific test of blood. The patients will be prone to osteonecrosis, and which patients are not going to be prone to osteonecrosis. There are some basic tests which you can do, but these are not well accepted internationally. Some of them say you can do these tests and you can have a sort of a 150 nanogram as a borderline, and some people don't accept this at all. Then there are some people who say you stop the drug for 6 months, you have what's called a drug-free interval, and then you could do the implants. And then when you do the implant itself, and again, between whether the patient is using an IV antimetabolite or an oral medicine, there are a lot of parameters. But so this is only like what we would call as a relative contraindication. It's not an absolute contraindication. And then if you have to do it, then you have to do the implant preparation itself will be what's called an adaptive preparation. You don't go by the standard implant site preparation. You will do an adaptive preparation. And the third important thing is you will not load such patients immediately. You would rather load them after the healing period. You do not want immediate load in these sort of situations.
Now, if I may just put in a little word, actually, because this is a very important question, and Dr. Gunasilan had quite aptly replied to it. So, if the patient is on injectable, which are mostly nitrogenous containing bisphosphonate, I presume it was the bisphosphonate that they were asking about, as I couldn't hear the injection clearly. So, if it's an injectable, then the patient is at high risk. Of course, we have tests like C-terminal telopeptide, where the value of 200 or 250 above is considered safe, and 150 below prones the patient to the necrosis of the jaw. So I think if the patient is on tablet, it's still acceptable if the patient goes on a drug holiday for about 6 months. But injectable, one has to be very careful because once this occurs, treatment part becomes very, very complicated. I mean, we have had patients who have had a bisphosphonate-induced osteocular necrosis, and we have used a low laser energy therapy in this, and that seemed to work. But otherwise, antibiotics, sequestration, surgical management doesn't, or hyperbaric oxygen doesn't work in this. So I think one has to be very careful with the injectable, but on non-nitrogenous containing, they can still go ahead with the surgery after a drug holiday.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq and Dr. Gupta, for answering that question. There's one question for the asking if cylinders for multi-unit abutments weldable intraorally. So currently we do not have them. We do have the titanium temporary cylinders for immediate temporization, and we have the castable sleeves, the cobalt chrome castable sleeves for final prosthesis. But yes, this is something probably which will we will look at it in near future. Next question is to Dr. Farooq. How much is the wet angle for the implant?
The wet angle, I think it's more of a mechanical. It can be directed to Dr. Naresh Bhatnagar. If you would have to like to put some, light on that.
Yes, so the wet angle on the implant cannot be assessed directly, but similar conditions can be made on a flat surface, and then we can do the drop test onto it to find out what is the wet angle. And we have tried to see the surface where from 80 degrees it has moved down to, if you just manage with your microstructure and the entire um, acid etching, it can go up to 55 to 65 degrees also. So we can try to go into a hydrophilic range also by modifying these surfaces. So it is also an evolution of technology here, that you dip your implant and the entire blood should to the top.
Sir, your voice is not very clear.
Maybe I have to.
Okay, while Professor Bhatnagar comes back to us, we have one question for Dr. Guna. Dr. Guna, will there be any problem while undergoing MRI scan, since iFix implants are made of titanium alloy, not by medically pure titanium?
I think Professor Bhatnagar also joined in this answer, but there's no issue because they are non-magnetic. So just like how all the implants that have been using now have no issues as far as MRI is concerned. And
Well, they're non-magnetoferric material, so they don't have a ferrite component in it. So it's safe for the MRI as such. Only thing is the superstructure should also not have magnetoferric material.
So most of these are not having any artifacts in the MRI or CT. So these are quite safe.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Sir, Bhatnagar, sir, can you continue with the wet angle question? I think you.
Yeah, so generally the contact angle is, there is a sessile drop method by which you can find this, but on an implant surface, it is difficult to find that because you need a flat surface. So you have to mimic the entire, let's say, blasting, acid etching surfaces, make the specimen and do the measurement. So we have done that. And we have seen that by tweaking the properties of your blasting and acid etching, you can come to 55 to 65 degrees contact angle, and you can eventually make it into a complete hydrophilic also, so that the moment you dip it into a liquid or let's say a blood, the entire blood can go up to the top. So that sort of a surface can also be very advantageous. Maybe future we can have that sort of a implant coming which is completely hydrophilic. So we are working on the surface properties and the techniques of improving the surface in our next advanced project. So that can come to the industry a little later.
Sir, the next question again goes out to you, Bhatnagar, sir. How thread implant is more compatible as compared to a press fit implant?
See, once you are having a threaded implant, they can be self-cutting threads, and then the amount of bone which you want to remove in a press fitting ones as compared to here is much less. And then there is a torque which you apply. So this torque, it should be greater than 40 Newton centimeter for primary mechanical stability. Uh, so there is a cycle of bone formation, and before bone formation there is a remodeling of the bone when the implant becomes loosened out, because the primary stability decreases and the secondary stability because of osseointegration has to increase. So there is a critical phase of a week or so. If it is a press fit ones, it will loosen out at that time. So always the threaded ones is much better. And there are also implants in the pipeline where we are going to use the concept of thread forming rather than thread cutting. So, which will eventually make entire paradigm shift in the implantology.
Thank you, Professor Bhatnagar. The next question goes out to Dr. Farooq. How does the placement of implant impact clinical outcome, whether it is crestal or subcrestal?
Well, it all depends whether you're going for anterior placement or you're going for posterior placement. So depending upon the amount of bone present, the anatomical structures, and you calculate from the adjoining CEJ, you decide upon whether it'll be subcrestal. Here, the surface reference is right up till the shoulder. So it can be equicrestal also, this implant. But it all differs from one clinical situation to another.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. Next question to Dr. Guna. Dr. Guna, which is more clinically beneficial, immediate implant or delayed implantation after tooth extraction?
Today, the ITI consensus statement is against immediate placement, especially in the aesthetic zone. In other areas, it's still equivocal. You can place it if you have all other parameters, if there's no active infection in the site, if the bone volume is adequate, and you can do immediate placement. You can get equally good results, except in the aesthetic zone. You do not want to do immediate placement if you want good long-term results. So delayed loading is better in the anterior zone. As far as full arch situations are concerned, I think you can do immediate placement as long as you get rid of any active bone infection. If there's a pedontal infection and periapical infection, when you do the osteoplasty, you make sure you do some thorough curettage of the lesion, and then actually you can still go ahead with the implant placement, and if necessary, some minor bone grafting or bone substitute used for grafting, and if you get the stability, you can load immediately.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your answer. Next question we have is for Professor Bhatnagar. What is the use of a Morse taper or a conical connection, and why not opt for a simple no Morse taper connection, which many foreign companies are providing? So why did IFX opt for a 12-degree Morse taper connection?
See, there is a there is a reason for doing this, because when you are having a hex connection, and if you just provide a small taper, there is a cold welding at that point because of the Morse taper. And because of the cold welding, the microbes and any of those artifacts will not enter into the domain which can sit there and create bacteria or some other thing. So it is always better to have that system, a small taper at the entry point. So because most of these implants goes subcrestal, so the chances of bacteria and any other artifacts getting into will be enormous, because whenever there is a connection, there is a tolerance, and that tolerance, even though we can minimize it, but still it will be there, good enough space for the bacteria and other elements to get into. So once there is a Morse taper, there is a cold welding. Cold welding means now it is a slightly joined, but it is not that high cold welding. It can be removed easily on tapping back.
Thank you, sir. So we have the next question for Dr. Farooq. What about the rate of bone loss seen after the loading is done in the cases?
See, what various studies, there was this study in University of Bern where they had evaluated the bone loss. They said that around 0.5 millimeter of bone loss preloading following the placement of implant, which they called as establishment of biological width, if they can put it in the sense of implant, was about 0.5 millimeter. And post-loading, bone loss of 1 to 1.5 was also acceptable during the first year. In our system, of course, I could not show that slide because of the paucity of time. We had calculated the bone loss pattern around our implant as well as the controls. So it was very much within the range of about a millimeter or millimeter and a half post loading, actually. And in some cases, also, what we found was there was hardly even 0.5 millimeter of bone loss, especially the case that I showed you of 7 years of follow up. So there, the crestal bone was quite preserved. So there are myriad of factors that affect it, uh, depending upon the type of surgery, the prosthesis, the loading. Uh, so a lot of factors come into play, but this was within the range of what was suggested through various studies.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. Uh, so the next question is, so regarding these implants, whether they are available commercially, yes, it is available commercially. We are in the market since 2019 August onwards, and we've launched our product in the ISOI in the 2019 in Mumbai. And you may write to us at the given email ID, or leave your message at the chat, and we will connect back to you regarding the queries. Now, coming to another question about the training programs, yes, right, we have our training programs in the pipeline. The first one to go, nevertheless, in this COVID situation, we have one training session which is organized in collaboration with Rajan Dental Institute, wherein you will have an online session and the contact training sessions happening. The brochure of this course is already on has been shared with you all in the file section. So maybe you can download or you can write back to us for more information regarding this course as well. And next question is to Dr. Farooq. Any clinical trials of joining implant with natural tooth in prosthesis can be done?
Joining implants with natural tooth. Okay, so you
As
mean to
in the
say connecting?
prosthesis, I guess.
Yeah, actually, it is what I have literature I have read that usually we do not recommend implant, the prosthesis or the superstructure being supported by implant as well as the tooth, because tooth has a periodontal ligament and there is a physiological mobility of the tooth also, while implant is an osseointegrated structure with no intervening periodontal ligament. So after some time, what happens, because of the movement of the natural tooth, it acts as a class one lever, you know, and it can torque out, you know, the implant as such, or it can loosen the implant in due course, as the studies have suggested. So usually we at Maulana Azad usually don't join the implant processes with the natural tooth.
So you're not audible in between.
Okay, am I audible right now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, from what I have learned from the literature, usually it is not recommended to join the implant processes with the tooth. Tooth having a periodontal ligament has a micro movement of its own, which is the physiological mobility as we read in the perio literature. Now, implant is an osseointegrated structure. So it doesn't have that physiological mobility as the tooth. So in due course, because of the loading, it acts as a class one lever, which can at a later date, loosen either the superstructure, that is the prosthesis, or could have detrimental effect on the implant itself.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. The next question is to Dr. Guna. Is there any contraindication for implantation?
I think this is getting into essay answers now. I think you should look at them as relative and absolute contraindications. So, if you look at common medical conditions such as diabetes, if your patient is what we call as well-controlled diabetes, well-controlled diabetic, they're fine. If they're moderately controlled or uncontrolled, or poorly controlled, which is basically anything between 8 and 10 HbA1c value, or above 10, which we call as poorly controlled, that is then contraindication. And then you have multiple factors, bruxism, you need to be careful. So we have what we call as relative contraindications. We have medical contraindications, we have local factors, and then habits. So there are several medical contraindications. And then local habits point of view, smoking, if you're heavy smokers, then that's a contraindication. And then local factors, oral hygiene. If your oral hygiene is poor, then that's a contraindication. If patients have bruxism, overload, that's a contraindication. So these are some of the common features that you can think of straight away. So the bone quality. So these are some of the features that you should be wary of as far as implants are concerned. And then most important is the combination of factors. Sometimes you may have one factor and then you may ignore the other one. So it's not just one factor that is detrimental. You have to look at interplay of factors. So it's not just a primary factor, but also the secondary factors. So you look at medical factors, look at the local factors, the dental condition, and then also look at habits. And combine this and then decide whether you can do it or you can't do it. Thank you.
So there is one more question for you, which says that what are the critical influences which can lead to implant failure?
I think in the surgical phase, it's obviously if you do not follow the protocol properly, and the commonest one is if you overheat the bone, if you do not use enough irrigation and coolant, or if you're not use the right instruments and right speed of drills. Basically, if you heat up bone, beyond 47 degrees, it's going to necrose. So that's an important consideration. And the next one during the healing phase will certainly be infection. You do not want any infection from the neighboring periodontal tissues. So that's why we are to look at oral hygiene as a very important aspect of long-term success. And once the implant is osseointegrated and you load, then you have issues of load, which can be improper load, overload, which can be from absolute factor of vertical loads. It can also be from lateral loads. So you have to look at load factors, the absolute load and the direction of the load, etc., which can be detrimental for the implants. So that's why from the design point of view, the planning as where you want the load to fall axial as far as possible axial load on that implant. And if you've got paraxial loads, you can see how you can minimize it by combining implants, especially if in a full arch situation, you need to cross-stabilize the implants and reduce the load on individual implants. So these are some of the common factors that can lead to problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Farooq, this is a question for you. Which drilling technique is more recommended and why? High-speed drilling with irrigation versus low-speed without irrigation?
Well, what I recommend is a stepwise drilling technique with irrigation. So initially we have a high speed during the first osteotomy, and as we go ahead with the increasing the osteotomy diameter, we reduce the speed as such. It's a stepwise manner with definitely with irrigation as such.
Thank you, sir. So I guess we have catered to almost all the questions which were asked to us regarding the product details. So here, now I would like to thank all the panel speakers for sharing such an informative session, for sharing their experiences in the entire journey. And thanks a lot to all the audience who've been so great and has been given a great hearing to the entire session and has asked a lot of questions to understand the entire thing. So to conclude the session, like we said, we have This was our first introductory webinar. We will have much more webinar series coming up very soon in the COVID times. I know having training programs is not possible, so we will see more of these webinars coming in from our end. And thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Have
Thank
a
you.
great day. Home, stay
Thank you
safe.
all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.